like most of the people who walk this planet, we also live with our eyes toward the earth. Gray pavement, fingers darting across small screens, entranced by the rhythms of our lives. But if you're lucky enough to call this place home, even for a day or two, you'll notice how often it asks you to lift your gaze. Sunshine will strike. The vast air above will simply beckon. Look up. Raise your chin. Bring your eyes to meet the sky. The sky is the place we've always found our answers. Since the feet of the first people found themselves here, lives have converged to create a place that hums with energy, excitement, and limitless potential. Because when you stand under our skies and ask, is it possible? The blue hues answer, anything is. And when we wonder, do we truly belong? Our skies tell us, you all do. This is the Blue Sky City.
Blue skies, nothing but blue skies shine on. Hey everybody, how we doing? There we go. Amazing. Well, welcome and good afternoon to Calgary Economic Development's 2025 Economic Outlook, powered by our friends at ATB Financial. Now, I'm Brad, and I think most of you know me as the CEO of Calgary Economic Development or the CEO of the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. But today only, a one-time offer, I'm actually going to be your host and MC for today's event. Really? Okay, all right. I was looking for a bit more love, but I can deal with that. Listen, we have an exciting program today. It's full of information, ideas, maybe even a little thought-provoking stuff. I might challenge your thinking on some stuff. We're going to hear some local, provincial, national, and international insights with a hope that it might provide you, our business and community leaders, with some perspectives to help you shape your thinking, your thoughts, and your plans as you go into 2025. Now, isn't this place amazing? Oh my God, to be here in the brand new BMO Center. Holy crap, is it unreal. To see this room filled like this is so heartwarming to see what's happening. I was just talking to Joel, and he's telling us that numbers are through the roof, and there's another event tonight that's going to be the same size as this. So that's a huge testament. I mean, this venue is going to be a cornerstone of our arts, entertainment, and culture district for years and years to come. And it's in a beautiful part of our city, a city that epitomizes confluence. And we know that since time immemorial, Indigenous peoples have come to this place where the Bow and Elbow rivers meet. The Blue Sky City inspires, connects, and calls for a deeper understanding of our past, but also for our future. As we come together to share a new story, a collective story of Calgary, we pay respect to the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, who are the original creators in our community. We acknowledge that we gather in the home of the Blackfoot Confederacy, who are comprised of the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani nations, the Ithaca Nakota, who are also comprised of the Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney nations, and of course the Tsuut'ina Nation. The city of Calgary is also the homeland to the historic Northwest Métis and to the Otopi-Meskwa Métis government, Nose Hill Métis District 5 and Elbow Métis District 6. We acknowledge all Indigenous people who have made Calgary their home. Thank you. Under the blue hues of promising skies, our new story is built on fostering a better relationship with First Peoples and taking pride in a place of possibilities. This is our Calgary. Thank you. Now, I would like to ask our good friend, Dr. Linda Menny-Guns, to come and provide us with our blessing today. Doctor?
Greetings and welcome to the Treaty 7 land. This land has been here since the beginning of time. Our stories are connected to all the mountains. Our stories are connected to the Crow's Nest Pass, for instance. The Crow's Nest Pass is where Scarface went in order to find the Creator's Lodge, and the Crow told him how to find that lodge. Okotoks, the Okotok story, those erratics that are there can be traced all the way down to Florida that come from the same stone. And we have that story too. We're connected to the land in such a deep way that the land is very important to us. I wear this dress today in order to bring a teaching to you. This dress is actually a recreation of the ghost dance. The Blackfoot people here in this territory were heavily involved in the ghost dance. And it occurred around the mid-1800s. It started in the United States, and it came up into Canada. You have to remember that the Blackfoot people are also in Montana, our South Piikani people. And the purpose of this dress was to help us through a period of loss of our food, the diseases that were sweeping through our nations were wiping out at least 50% of each population, and the death camps were all over the land. This ceremony came to us as a way to save our culture and to survive. And the dress has a story. If you look at the pictures of the dress, on the bottom are items, the land, the trees, the grass. In the middle are humans and animals. And the top of the dress has the stars and the planets in it. What's not on this dress are any items that come from the trade route. We were trying to get back to our philosophy of living as one with all of our surrounding environment. Our nation, when we had this territory, went from the Saskatchewan River all the way down the backbone of the earth to Yellowstone National Park, around the Sweetgrass Hills, and into most of Saskatchewan. And when we had this land, we had an obligation to every bird, every animal, four-legged, the flying ones, and the underwater ones, to the air and to the water. And what we had a responsibility for was to make sure in the generation that we were in, that we knew how many bears, how many deers, how many animals and creatures there were. And our responsibility was to make sure that the same amount of animals were there for the next generation, that we would never overpopulate and put a burden on the animals that were there. And so I ask you, from deep within our culture,
Like most of the people who walk
to
this
take into
planet,
consideration and take care of the land and the animals and the creatures that are here so that we can always live in balance and so that we can all survive together in the next generation. Ayonatos, Natanakunato Yikmishishkumaki, Ayik Spumukinan, Ayik Sukapi, Kinapi Okamotapi, I Ponakapi Kimpon Namska Kokin, Yokimex, I Spumukinan. I've called on those things that I have been transferred, bundles that we cherish and that we are bringing back from the museums and we're recreating. When I first became involved in the culture, which was about 20 years ago, there were only about 5 or 6 of those bundles. Now there's close to 14 or 15 of them. We're gradually pulling together our culture again. But in each one of those bundles, and they're huge, actually, they're quite large, we've made a contract with every creature, the beavers, the bears, the crows, and we sing their song every spring and every fall in order to reaffirm our contract with them, that we'll take care of them as long as they take care of us. And I ask you to consider those things in the wider world and in the world that you're working in. You're doing very important work, and we hope to work with you on many initiatives so that we can all move together to get in the next generation and in the future. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Great.
Oh, it's a
Great.
pleasure as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Folks, we have an amazing lineup today. So let me tell you what's going to happen. We're going to first kick things off with a presenting sponsor from our friends at ATB Financial to get it going. Then you're going to hear from Calgary Economic Development's Board Chair, Joe Lougheed, followed by Mayor Gondak for some local perspective. Mark Parsons, the Vice President of ATB, the Chief Economist of ATB Financial, will also talk to us a little bit about what he sees coming ahead for 2025. We'll then hear from our Premier, Danielle Smith, and then we're going to hear from our keynote speaker, the former U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Bruce Heyman. You know, literally, the U.S. election is 4 weeks away from today, and the outcome could have major impacts on our economy. And as the former ambassador and someone with extensive experience in business, I think he's going to bring some really interesting and special perspectives for us today. We're going to close things off with Bruce and I doing a little one-on-one, a Q&A. But you know what? We also want to make this fun for a change. No, I'm kidding. We actually want this to be interactive. So we want you to ask Bruce questions, and I'm going to read as many as I can. So we're going to be using the Slido app. So if you see the QR code on the screen or on your tables or around the venue, please click on it, get practicing, get those questions ready, because we've got some great conversation to be had this afternoon. Economic Outlook is one of 2 signature events that we host every year. It's an opportunity for our community to come together, catch up, connect, and share. You know, at our report to community this spring, we talked about the work that we do at Calgary Economic Development and at the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. And we spoke about the indelible spirit of what our community is made of. Look, we're a city of dreamers, builders, doers, innovators, and visionaries. And we're a city that gets stuff. We get stuff done, right, Joe? We get stuff done. But truly, we are a city of unexpected possibilities. We're a place of confluence where peoples, lands, cultures, and ideas converge under an inspiring blue sky. But we also know that blue skies are not always on the horizon. And that's why events like this one are so important. It's about looking ahead. It's about providing insights about local, national, and global economic trends that may or will shape our economies in the year ahead. It's about looking at what's coming at us. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But it's making sure that we, as a community, are ready for and are able to take advantage of these potential opportunities. And that's what Economic Outlook is about. It's about sharing the perspectives, ideas, information. So, let's kick things off and get going with some information. I'd like to now ask Lisa McDonald, Group Head of Everyday Financial Services at ATB Financial, to say a few words. Lisa.
What a magnificent room. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lisa McDonald, and I'm the Group Head of ATB's Retail and Entrepreneurial Banking business. This event has become an annual highlight for the team at ATB Financial, and we are absolutely proud to be in our 9th year as title sponsor. It's an honor to be here today sharing this stage with the dynamic business leaders who are shaping the future of Calgary and Alberta. You are the backbone of our economy, the innovators, the risk takers, the dreamers who make Alberta such a vibrant place to live and work. Now, I know we're here to talk about the big picture today, global trends and their impact. And yes, that's very important. We can't ignore the winds of change blowing across the world. But today, I'd like to take a moment to shift our focus a bit closer to home, and I want to talk about all of you. I want to talk about the resilience, the shared determination that defines Alberta's spirit. We've seen it time and time again. When oil prices plummet, we innovate. When floods ravage our communities, we rebuild. When a global pandemic throws us unprecedented challenge, we adapt. And right now, we're facing new challenges. We have an uncertain geopolitical environment. Inflation and affordability are continuing to squeeze household budgets, and the cost of doing business is rising. It is a challenging time. But here's the thing about Albertans. We don't shy away from challenges. We face them head on with that signature blend of resilience and ingenuity. We adapt, we innovate, we build, and together we find a way forward. And amidst today's challenges, I see plenty of opportunity. I see a province brimming with potential. Record numbers of our fellow Canadians and immigrants from all over the world are coming to find out what makes Calgary, year in and year out, one of the best cities in the world. I see entrepreneurs ready to seize the moment. I see communities coming together to support one another. And I see leaders growing our economy and building our province. Events like today can play a vital role in building the community that will address these challenges. Today provides us a platform to share insights, to learn from each other, and to chart a course forward together. So let's embrace this opportunity. Let's engage in thoughtful discussion. Let's explore new ideas, and let's remember our greatest strength, our undeniable grit. Let's continue to dream big, to work hard and support each other. And let's show the world what we're made of, because together we can build an even brighter future. Thank you, and enjoy the event.
Thank you, Lisa. And a great big thank you to ATB Financial for being such a great partner and supporting this event with us for so many years. Economic development is a team sport. And I'm blessed to have an amazing team who do incredible work for our communities. But I'm also very grateful to all of our board members as well. Our volunteer board members who volunteer their time, their efforts, and provide guidance in helping us shape the work that we do. And now to say a few words on behalf of our boards, I'd like to invite Joe Lougheed, Chair of Calgary Economic Development.
Well, thanks very much, Brad. And folks, we have an exciting afternoon planned for each and every one of you. I think this is a record crowd for our Economic Outlook, and how fitting that it's in this amazing new building with blue skies over to the right. So I'm so glad that you are all here. On behalf of my fellow board chair, Dan Balaban, who chairs the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund, and all of our board members at CED, I want to welcome you to the 2025 version of Economic Outlook, powered by ATB. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge our supporters and our sponsors. And I'll start today with our board members. We are very fortunate to have a passionate group of leaders on both the Calgary Economic Development Board and the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund Board. And this year, we have a great group of new directors, new ambassadors for our economy and for our city. Jennifer Buey, James Clements, Kelly Matheson-King, and Byron Nealis, each joining the CED board, as well as Dan Balaban, Guillaume Bedard, Lisa Oldridge, Colleen Pound, and Brad Zumwalt joining the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund board. Success for Calgary starts with its people, and I am thrilled to work with such a great group of volunteer directors. Now, a brief shout out to our sponsors. I'd like to start by extending a big thank you to our presenting sponsor and longtime supporter, who we just heard from, ATB Financial. They're a supporter of our city and indeed our entire province. A huge thank you as well to our VIP networking sponsor, WSP Global. And to our gold sponsors, the CAT Pension Plan, Post Media, and Rogers, as well as our silver sponsors, Mount Royal University, PCL Construction, Stone Olafson, and the University of Calgary. All of our sponsors are Team Calgary partners whose support allows us to do the work we do all year long. Our Team Calgary Partner Initiative was designed to create a team approach with leading businesses in Calgary to help our community prosper, and each day they do that very thing. And now we have almost 90 Team Calgary members that are supporting the work that we do to build economic prosperity for this city. This collaboration builds on great support from the city, your members of council, the province of Alberta, and numerous federal government agencies, all collaborating for you and the city. We have a dynamic program ahead of us today featuring insights on local, national, and international economic trends that will shape our economy in the year ahead. So, let's go, and let's have a great blue sky day. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Joe. I also want to thank all of our Team Calgary partners for their support and their belief in our mandate, because we couldn't do the work without your support. So thank you. And by the way, if you're not a Team Calgary partner yet, you just got to give me a call. I'm happy to bring you on. We'd love to have you. Look, at the risk of repeating myself as well, I do want to thank all of our board members for all that they do for our community and our city. Yes, thank you. We still have a lot to accomplish as we work towards our mandate at Calgary Economic Development, which is helping position Calgary for long-term economic success. Making sure our community continues to be the destination of choice, we need to focus on expanding, retaining, and attracting companies, capital, and talent. Last year alone, we saw the creation and retention of over 7,000 jobs in our community. We attracted more than $730 million of investment into our community. We also saw great success in supporting our local businesses looking to expand their products and services to other markets. In fact, we actually signed 42 trade deals last year in 22 unique markets through our Trade Accelerator program, which is focused on helping Calgary companies grow their footprint beyond our region. And of course, the film and interactive digital media industry continues to grow. We're coming out of a generational strike by Hollywood's actors and writers. But yet we've come out with even more projects that are currently underway in our city today, and the pipeline for 2025 has never been more robust. All of these help to make our community and our city stronger. So now, for a bit more local perspective, I'd like to welcome our Mayor, Mayor Gondek, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oki, Dadanastada, Ambawastich, and Tansei. These are greetings to all of you in the mother languages of the Treaty 7 Indigenous peoples who stewarded these lands for generations before many of us came to settle here at the confluence of the Bow and Elbow rivers. And I want to take a moment to consider these roots. At the confluence of two rivers, where people were able to live in harmony with each other, with the land, with the water, with all manner of life. This was a place where the convergence of ideas and opportunities came together naturally, with an overarching goal of creating a place where everyone was welcomed and everyone felt that they belonged. And you may feel that this is an idyllic view, or you may think that this has no place at an economic outlook event. But I would argue that this view of place that offers a sense of community and a sense of belonging, it is the very foundation of where Calgary comes from and where we are today. This is who we are, and this is why we have met with success over the years. I've spent almost 3 decades in this city with the optimism that our future holds promise for everyone who comes here. And our secret is simple. We are a city who believes that we can. No matter what the question, no matter what the obstacle, we just know that we can. And that is the type of certainty that we have always had to grow into who we are now. But the question is, how do we retain that in a future that seems so uncertain, at a time where geopolitical forces create so much unease? How do we ensure that the destiny of our city is within our own control and not vulnerable to outside pressures? That's a very tall order, especially considering what we've heard from ATB Financial's quarterly economic outlook, that the American election and global unrest pose a threat to our ability to achieve our full potential. However, it's that very same report that indicates that Alberta's economic prospects are looking up, that real GDP growth in Alberta will be 2.5% this year and 2.8% next year, and that is well above national forecasts. This projected economic success is rooted in Calgary's role as the economic engine of our province, if not our nation. This city that is home to everything from oil and gas to machine learning and artificial intelligence to film and esports, it's this city that drives the success of our province. This is a city of collaborators because we understand the power of more minds focused on a common goal, that better ideas and better outcomes are derived from being challenged by people with different perspectives. We are collaborators with other orders of government because now, more than ever, we have an obligation to serve a public that is faced with 2 very different realities. The gap between the wealthy and the poor continues to widen. Here in our city, the Calgary Foundation has recently released information that demonstrates more and more families are struggling to put food on their table, that more parents are skipping meals so their kids have enough to eat. Rent increases are outpacing growth in wages. Food banks and other charitable organizations are receiving fewer donations as Calgarians have less to give. That means that affordability will have to be a key consideration in anything we do to advance the goal of prosperity for all. We must ensure that access to power remains affordable and that access to housing is respectful of people's income. We must continue to make investments in public transit as the great equalizer, allowing people to traverse this city in an affordable and accessible manner. That's why we continue to work with the Government of Alberta and the Government of Canada to draw investment into our city. We are a place that leads the country in housing starts, which is why leveraging additional federal funding for housing is so important. We need other orders of government to match our investments and keep building on the momentum that we have created. We're working with the provincial government to ensure that our electricity grid is equipped to handle added pressure from growth, like the 200 people plus that are moving here every single day, along with industries like data centers that wish to locate here. And we continue to work with both the provincial and federal governments to invest in transit solutions that keep our city appealing to those who already live here and those who are looking to move here. But it's more than partnerships with government that make a city great and derive its economy. There must be powerful partnerships with the private sector, as well as between sectors of the economy, and we must be embracing innovation. I'm going to use the tech sector as an example of how we have seen a rise in collaborations between business and business, as well as business and local government. And here's the story for you. According to ATB Financial's latest research, Alberta's tech sector is rising and is well poised for growth. Tech companies in Alberta raised over $2.7 billion in venture capital between 2019 and 2023. Beating out British Columbia as the third largest province for venture capital raised in the first half of this year. And additionally, in the last 5 years, Calgary has had the fastest growing tech workforce out of all North American locations, according to CBRE. This growth in the tech sector matters because these are the bright minds that challenge convention in all other sectors. Consider that 60% of all tech companies that have located in Calgary in recent years have done so they could partner with oil and gas. They're creating solutions for carbon capture, both for storage and for utilization. They are using AI to offer remote monitoring solutions for pipelines and for wells. And these tech companies understand what it takes to advance the goals of energy transformation while also creating greater sustainability of our existing resources. Understanding that decarbonization is the key to sustainability for Alberta's energy sector, this has led to us augmenting our natural resources with renewables, exceeding all other provinces. Western Canada, with Alberta firmly in the lead, is producing 36 times the renewables of the rest of the country. It's also why we have local firms looking at hydrogen production that can leverage our natural gas assets and also deploy carbon capture and storage solutions for emissions reduction. All of this is enabled by tech. We're a city that takes the energy transition seriously, and we're doing it in a manner that also prioritizes security and affordability of energy. We're looking out for everyone as we are creating greater sustainability. And we're also looking to the future. We're creating opportunities for more well-paying jobs by embarking on a cross-sector and a cross-government plan to strengthen our position as a premier inland port. We have an important responsibility and opportunity as an inland port to ensure we're leading the market in supply chain management, in logistics, as well as sustainability. Together with our neighboring Rocky View County, Calgary is exploring the creation of a rail-served industrial hub on the east side of the city to ensure that we are maximizing the opportunities afforded to us through CPKC, which is now connecting Canada, the US, and Mexico. Blending our ability to transfer goods in multiple ways means that we now have access to new markets. And it addresses emissions reduction through increasing the availability of shipping by rail, a solution that cuts emissions by 75% compared to trucking. And the convergence of the tech and logistics sectors in our city also means that we have experts working on sustainable aviation fuels, particularly important given that YYC is one of Canada's leading freight handling airports. And now imagine that this rail-served industrial hub is also able to encourage bordering development, like a hub for the data centers that I mentioned a few minutes ago. Calgary is well suited to host data centers because of our natural cooling through weather conditions for 6 months of the year. And if you think big picture, not only will we be creating new jobs in data management, as well as shipping, logistics, and industrial sectors, we will also have the opportunity to capture waste heat from a data center hub to offer a district energy solution in an industrial area. It's plans like this that demonstrate collaboration in action, and it's one of the primary reasons that investor confidence remains so high for our city. When we invest in ourselves as Calgarians and present a bold vision that represents job opportunity, trade opportunity, and development opportunity, private sector investment and government partnerships follow. The future holds a great deal of opportunity for Calgarians, and we can reverse that trend that has created a divide between those who have and those who are in need. We have to be intentional in how we do that, however. We must continue to establish Calgary as a place where you can succeed because we are willing to do the work that creates opportunity for everyone. I'm interested in making sure that we are tapping different perspectives to help us accomplish this goal. And that's why I've launched the Calgary Talks series starting on October the 18th to engage in conversation with people who have chosen to make this city their home. I want to hear more about what they feel is working well, and I want to hear about the issues that they feel we still need to address together. More collaboration, more listening, and more creation of opportunity. That's what will future-proof this great city. Calgary is positioned to take the lead in economic growth for this country. Let's make sure we achieve that success by focusing on what brings us together and sends a strong message that we are a place where your investments will pay off. Thanks so much for being here, everyone. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, while our economies remain strong, despite some challenges the last couple of years, 2025 economic outlook is also about helping us plan ahead. Looking ahead is a crucial part of the work that we do at Calgary Economic Development. And we do that through the use of foresight. And I don't mean forecasting. I mean, what we try to do is look at global trends that may impact our key sectors or identify other sectors that we need to pay attention to. So we look 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years out and look for those signals that are going on out there. And then we look at what's coming at us, we can understand how to better position our city and our province to ensure that we can take advantage of those trends. This kind of work helps us navigate uncertainty and the changing economic landscape that we're faced with in these days. I mean, you're going to hear more about our foresight work in the coming months, but we don't do this in a silo. We also look to other organizations like ATB Financial for their analysis and what they view and what may shape our economy in the year ahead. So with that, I'd like now to welcome our good friend, Mark Parsons, Vice President and Chief Economist of ATB Financial.
Thank you, Brad. It's great to be here. Great crowd. So first question, most important question, who likes Tom Petty? Tom Petty fans, yeah? Okay, did you know that Tom Petty sang a lot of songs about monetary policy? Trust me, let's get into it. So Tom Petty wrote the song The Waiting, where he said the waiting is the hardest part. And you know, when interest rates got to 5%, people are like, how long does the Bank of Canada keep going on this? Like, how long are we be stuck with these high rates? And then we've had cuts. We've had 3 cuts of the Bank of Canada. And I actually think it's moving to sort of like a free fallen type situation here. Like, I think the Bank of Canada is going to be cutting if they're looking at the economy. I'm not sure they're going to do it, but I think they should go 50 basis points this month and go 25 basis points December to end the year. And we think the policy rate's going to be at 2.75% by around this point next year. So that's the great news. Great. But the waiting isn't done. It's not done. So what are people waiting for? Mortgages to reset at higher rates than before, right? Debt servicing costs are going up. Inflation, the economist is talking about, oh, inflation's 2% in Canada, that's great. Consumers aren't celebrating on the streets. That's because prices are 18% higher than they were 4 years ago. You can forgive people for not celebrating right now. So this is going to take some time. In our forecast, we just don't see the consumer really coming back anytime soon. It's kind of flattish trend on retail sales, and that's what's really holding back our forecast. But if you go to Fleetwood Mac and their song, Go Your Own Way, they were writing about the US economy, and it's kind of like ahead of their time, because really no one saw what was going to happen to the US economy over the last few years. I mean, a lot of economists would say the US should be in the recession right now. The Federal Reserve is raising interest rates. That's really going to hurt. That's going to slow down consumer spending. It's been anything but. You saw the jobs report last week. You get just over 4% unemployment. Their economy's growing. The GDP per capita's been rising. Canada's been a different story. So what's the US even going through right now? Like, is it even a landing? Like, you know, Canada's going to go through what I think is a softish landing. We'll get inflation under control. But we've taken a hit, right? Unemployment's gone up. GDP per capita's fallen. US has gone the other way, which makes the election super interesting. Because you think this is Harris's to lose, right, Bruce? Like, but what are Americans upset about? It's the same thing we're upset about. Inflation. Inflation makes people miserable. You see it every day you go to the store. It's like, oh man, it costs so much. And I think that's what, I mean, there's other things going on in the US, but it's not like they're looking up at Canada and being like, you know what, we're doing better than them. You know, I think they're really, really upset about inflation, maybe border security and other things. Alberta Bound, right? 2 songs written about this. We're no stranger to interprovincial migration. The story here in Alberta, you know, nationally the population's been growing at a rapid rate, but there's something else going on in Alberta. Our population grew about 200,000 last year, over 200,000. That's 2 red deers. Just think about that. It's insane. And our population's growing 4.4%, the last observation. The national population is 3%. That's, you know, 1.5 percentage points higher than the national average. So what is it? Interprovincial migration. People are coming here from other provinces. That's the differentiator. We're all getting international migrants, but we're getting more interprovincial migrants the last 3 years. So why are people coming to Alberta? And it's not the usual story, right? Because I can tell you, I've looked at this my whole career, and I'm like, if the Alberta unemployment rate is lower than the rest of Canada, people come. It works every time. Didn't work this time. Unemployment rate's been higher in Alberta. So why are people coming? Jobs, yes, got more jobs. So job growth's been stronger in Alberta. But, clue, where people come from? BC and Ontario. What do those 2 provinces have in common? Expensive housing, right? And so I get in trouble every time I say this, like, oh, Mark, you're not going to say Alberta's housing market's affordable, are you? Because it's not. A lot of people don't find it affordable. Like, trust me, it's not. Prices have gone up. But here's the thing about interprovincial migration. You just have to be better. Your neighbor, you don't have to be great. You just have to be better. And we're better on housing affordability. And a lot of people are coming. And here's the thing. I don't see that ending anytime soon. Affordability, #1 issue for a lot of people. People are chasing affordability, and they're chasing by moving around the country. They're moving to different provinces. And I think we're in for chasing affordability part 2. What's part 2? The inside Alberta edition. So Calgary's gotten a lot more expensive. Calgary's housing market's taken off. Edmonton, where I'm from, not so much. And right on cue, Edmonton housing market has taken off. Housing prices have gone up. That gap's starting to close. So I think you're going to see people moving within the province trying to find more affordable housing. But people are still going to move into Calgary. Calgary had 96,000 people added in 2023. Huge. It's like 6%. It's insane. And I don't see that ending anytime soon. I think the population growth numbers are going to slow. Interprovincial migration is going to moderate, and international is going to moderate as well through fewer temporary residents, but it's still going to stay strong. This is going to be the most obvious thing I'm going to say in this presentation, and that's that people need homes. But like, trust me, it's important. The household formation in Alberta is running so far above and beyond our ability to build homes. So it's created this massive gap where the industry has had to step up to the plate and build more homes. And the mayor alluded to this. You know, it's absolutely incredible how many homes, I don't know if there's any home builders in this room. I'm sure there are. how you've been able to step up to the plate and build as many homes as you are right now, because home construction in Alberta has taken off, and the rest of the country has been pretty flat. Starting in Calgary is moving to Edmonton as well. So this is great, but many, many more homes need to be built, and housing construction is one area where I see a lot of growth in the next 2 years as we play catch up. So energy. Energy is doing more than its part to power the Alberta economy right now, but it looks a lot different this time around. So in Alberta, it'd be like, the investment booms that we get, and unemployment goes down, and wages go up. It's not that right now. Upstream oil and gas investment is steady, but it's not growing that quickly. What we're seeing is a production boom in this province. So with Trans Mountain expansion coming online, oil production surging, we're getting it on gas too, with Coastal GasLink and LNG Canada Phase 1 and other LNG facilities. The number one opportunity identified in the oil and gas sector by the industry in a recent survey done by ATB Capital Markets is LNG. Number one. And so this is really kind of a different story. Energy is adding in different ways, and we're getting more downstream investment as well. So if I take a giant step back and look at, okay, what's going on? What's driving the Alberta economy? It's the playing on strengths in energy, hydrogen, renewable fuels, petrochemicals, LNG, critical minerals, lithium from the brine, and food manufacturing, let's not forget about that, adding value to our agriculture products with, facilities like McCain's potato processing plant outside of Lethbridge, and milling operations and plant-based proteins. We're seeing more of that. And then I go to the other side. I'm kind of making up sides here. You got the tourism sectors going, technology in aviation to Haviland, and we talked about the Calgary International, Edmonton International becoming hubs. And in the middle of all this is this focus on emissions reduction. New carbon capture projects have been announced over the summer. It was the summer of carbon capture. So that's all great. Tech is something super fascinating. A skeptic would say, you know what, I don't think Alberta could have a tech sector. It's oil and gas powerhouse. It doesn't make sense. How can we be good at tech? I think the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, you look at the CBRE's done some work, which we published in our Outlook report, that shows that Calgary is leading all North American cities in the 10 fastest growing tech workforces in North America. And Edmonton's up there as well as one of the smaller markets. So what's going on in tech? What does tech need? Talent. I just showed you the chart on migration. People are coming here in droves. If I had more time, I would show you that people are coming. The people that are coming are young, really young. It's keeping our populations a bit younger right now. So young, talented people coming to Alberta, the capital flows. We're building an ecosystem here, and it's kind of building on itself, and it's real. So what song can I come up with that describes the Alberta economy? I really had to dig deep into the musical archives here, so bear with me. This is a bit of a long shot, so I don't know if anyone is there's going to be a few people. You have to be at least my age to get this. Matthew Wilder, Break My Stride. Some of you are singing. I'm not going to sing. Some of you are singing in your head. And if you don't know the song, please play it on the ride home. You'll be rocking out. So I think that Alberta is really finding its stride right now. That's the best way I can think of this. We went through this really difficult period, 15-16 recession, of course, 18-19, we ran into market access issues. We couldn't get oil out of Alberta. That led to curtailment. And then 2020 was kind of a double whammy for Alberta. Of course, COVID everywhere, but it hit our oil and gas industry particularly hard. But we're coming out of that, and we're really finding ourselves in a position where we think that Alberta will lead in growth this year and perhaps next, with 2.5% and 2.8% growth next year. Oil production, I talked about, housing activity, of course, and then some growth we're seeing in these other sectors, including, I've mentioned petrochemicals. The largest capital project right now in Alberta is Dallas Path to Zero, major project. So I'm not going to talk about the US because you're going to get a great presentation on the US. I'm just going to give you 162 billion reasons to care about the US. And that was our exports to the US last year from Alberta. 90% of everything we sent out of Alberta, all the goods, went to the US, $162 billion. And if you look at our energy products, 98%. But down the list, very, very high. The only one that's relatively low is agriculture. A lot of that goes to Asia. So you're not going to invite an economist to speak without me talking about productivity. Like, I'm just going to do it. I'm sorry. I'm going to talk about labor productivity. Everyone's talking about it. I was talking to my economist friend, and we're like, hey, isn't it cool that, we've been talking about productivity, economists, and now everyone's talking about it? And then I'm like, you know what? I said to him, I'm like, I think people are talking about it more, but when's the last time you were at a party and people were talking about labor productivity? It just doesn't, and if they are, it's probably time to leave the party. But the Bank of Canada's talking about it. And the Bank of Canada, they put out good stuff, but honestly, they mostly talk about excess supply in the economy and inflationary pressures, that kind of stuff. And now they're talking about breaking the glass. This is an emergency, we need to do something about it. And the reason we're so fussed about this here in Canada, we should be fussed about it, is because it turns out productivity matters for wages. So you can't really get sustained wage growth without improvements to labor productivity. So that's a bit of a problem. We're at 70% of US levels right now. Not great. Now, there's a whole summit on this next week to talk about what's happening with our productivity. I'll just point out one thing. There's a long list, but one thing is our business investment lower today than it was 10 years ago. How do you improve labor productivity with lower levels of business investment? So we got to mind the gap. In Alberta, we have high levels of labor productivity, which is fantastic. We also have higher GDP per capita. That's long been Alberta's advantage, but that gap has closed. It's narrowed. It's not closed. It's narrowed. And so it's something we need to really think about. And I wrote a paper over the summer that talks about diversification and productivity. Often we say we need to diversify the economy, and I say, yeah, that's great. We also need a productive economy. That sounds great too. But if you look at this scatter plot, which is wow, look at this scatter plot. It's a really exciting scatter plot. But you see that oil and gas extraction is, something, obviously we do a lot of here in Alberta. That's a really productive industry. It also pays a lot. So the productive industries pay a lot. But if you look at closely, it's you have petroleum manufacturing, pipeline transportation, chemical, all these things that we do. We have a lot of people working in these industries. So we want productivity, yes. We also want diversification, true. So how do we do productive diversification, huh? That's something we should be talking about. In fact, I think the diversification person should go for drinks with the productivity person. Go on a date. That sounds kind of exciting, right? Get everyone talking together about productive diversification. I don't know if I sold that. So look, I'm doing a flyover here. We're talking, economists are talking about landing planes. When do economists start talking about flying and landing planes? But that's what we're doing. I would call Canada's landing softish. I would say soft, but that's too strong of a word. Because look, our unemployment rate's gone up. Newcomers are having a harder time finding work. So that's a bit of it's not a soft landing, it's softish. The US landing is no landing right now. Repairs are needed on landing. We have a productivity problem, we gotta fix that. Housing affordability is an issue. So even as the Bank of Canada lowers its policy rate to 2.75%, there's still gonna be some challenges, right? There's still repairs upon landing. And then finally, I would make this point. Alberta is well positioned for takeoff. I think the fundamentals here are so strong. We have resources, every resource you can imagine, right? Energy, food, forestry, a young population, skilled, growing population. So I think that those fundamentals are strong in the envy of a lot of jurisdictions right now. And my time is over, which means I should probably stop, but I'm going to tell you one more story. When I go on summer vacation, I kind of learn something about myself every year, and it's kind of like you're supposed to be reflective on vacation and like finding out like purpose in life and everything. So I was doing a bit of that, and I was in Germany with my family. So it's in we're at the Frankfurt train station, and we're excited to be there, but we're a little tired, and we didn't know where we were. So we're like looking around, and then we see there's this welcome desk. Like, oh great, we're gonna find out where we go, what to do. So we get up there, and we wait in line, and we get to our turn, and this lovely lady says to us, "How can I help?" And I said, "You know, we're from Canada. We're so excited to be here. You know, we got a couple weeks lined up here. We're going to be traveling. We're going to be doing all this stuff, and just trying to get a lay of the land and everything." And she's looking at me like, "What's this guy talking about? Like, I'm just helping people get around here." And she stops me mid-sentence and says, "Excuse me, but you're saying a lot of words, and you're telling me a long story. What is your question?" And I'm like, "I don't understand my train ticket." And she reads my ticket, "Well, you just catch it at 10:15 at gate C2. And I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And I walked off. So, get to the point. That's a long story to say get to the point. But I learned, get to the point. So before this presentation, I was like, I'm going to try and summarize everything in one word. So what's my word? Germans have these long words, so it's not a super long one. And. That's my word. It's and. So, productivity. We need to be productive. We need to diversify. True, right? We need to provide energy, food security. We need to decarbonize, energy transition. True. It's not an or conversation, folks. It's and. We got to do both. Our prosperity depends on it. Our future depends on it. We need to get down the middle of that path, walk down the middle, and say, like, how can we do both? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Really interesting stuff. Productive diversification, innovation. I don't know, there's something there, I think, right? Listen, but it is truly a reminder that we can't take our foot off the gas. We need to continue to drive diversification in our economy. And that's why the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund, or OSIF, we're focused on moving our innovation agenda forward. We're here to help build a resilient and diversified economy. End of the day, OSIF is built to find, fuel, and foster opportunities for our community. We find the right vehicles that will help propel and diversify our economy. We fuel those ideas with combustible capital that attracts other investments into our community. And we foster those investments by making sure we support them throughout our community. And it's working. I mean, we've seen a 10 times return on the funds committed. Almost $1 billion of spurred-on investment has come into our jurisdiction. We've seen over 800 companies created or scaled. And the work that's being done is to help our community and our ecosystem flourish. You know, our startup ecosystem is now valued at $8 billion. That number was just barely over 5 years ago. You know, as you heard before, we've been named the fastest growing tech talent hub in North America. Why is that important? Well, that's because capital follows talent. And as a testament to the work that's being done in our community, you heard the mayor talk about this. We've seen record amounts of venture capital come into our city in the first half of this year. And as you heard, it's the first time we've actually outpaced Vancouver. But we've also been outpacing the rest of Canada for the last 5 years. We've seen continual growth in venture capital investment. Again, it's a testament to the work that's being done across our city. You know, Mark touched on this before. The truth is, we will be and always have been the energy capital of this country. But I argue we're also, and will continue to be, the energy innovation capital of our nation. And if we continue to do the things that we're doing on this path, we can truly be a city and a region and a province that's underpinned by innovation. I mean, you don't have to look far. I mean, if you look at all of the other advantages that we have here in our province, I mean, we have one of the best business environments in all of Canada, if not North America. We have a city and a province where anything is possible. And speaking of the province, I'd now like to welcome our Premier, Danielle Smith, to the stage to share her thoughts.
Well, thank you, Brad, for that kind introduction. I feel like everyone has already given my speech, so I'll just add on. I'll just end all the way through because I think there's so many wonderful things happening in this city, and it's my absolute favorite topic to talk about. I do want to say that it's great to be here with you for this important conversation. I do want to acknowledge a few others who have spoken before me, of course. Calgary Mayor Jody Gondek, former U.S. Ambassador to Canada Bruce Heyman have also joined us here today, and my colleague in the legislature, Rick McIver, our Minister of Municipal Affairs, and I have heard that Her Honor, the Honourable Lois Mitchell, is here as well. I don't think she ever misses a single business forum, so I'm glad to see that you're here as well. And I do, of course, want to thank Calgary Economic Development for bringing us together to reflect on the past year and to look ahead to 2025. I've got to tell you, it's hard to think of a better venue for us to have this conversation than this beautiful BMO Centre. I was back here in June for the grand opening of this incredible space at pretty much the midpoint of what was truly an amazing year for Calgary. A few weeks later, the BMO Centre was the focal point for a stampede that smashed the all-time attendance record. And that was just one win in a year full of wins. Another big win, of course, was the Trans Mountain Pipeline coming online. Alberta has now dramatically increased export capacity, and our energy producers are delivering crude oil in record volumes. We also have the Coastal GasLink completion and LNG Canada on the cusp of opening up. That's going to make a major change in our natural gas markets as well. But the nice thing is that on both major commodity products, the industry is growing again after a really tough decade. And that means so much in a city like Calgary and our whole province, whose fortunes are so closely connected to oil and to gas. But as we all know these days, Calgary is a whole lot more than just the energy capital these days. The economy here has been diversifying for decades. In 2024, we saw investment and growth in so many of Calgary's key industries. That includes aviation and film and television, technology, interactive digital media, telecommunications, finance, logistics. In a big victory this past year, Alberta, sounds like it's been mentioned a couple of times, blew past British Columbia for the first time in attracting venture capital investment. And that follows on 2 consecutive years of over $700 million in venture capital investment. And the majority, of course, of those investment dollars have wound up right here in Calgary. I could rattle off examples like that all afternoon, but I think it is more important to focus on why this is happening. The value proposition for investors is simple, but is persuasive. Alberta has the lowest corporate taxes in Canada, 30% lower than the next closest province, and lower than 44 combined U.S. Federal state taxes. So it makes us one of the lowest in North America. We don't have a sales tax, we don't have a health premiums tax, we don't have a payroll tax, we don't have a capital tax. We also have an innovative and entrepreneurial population with skills and experience in some of Canada's most important industries. And the numbers prove it. Alberta is leading the country in private sector job growth. I think it was the Business Council of Alberta that said that in the last 6 months, Alberta was responsible for 90% of all of the private sector job growth. And so far this year, Metro Calgary has seen the highest increase in the number of active businesses among all Canadian cities. This is not a surprise, and it is not an accident. It's just how we do it, both here in Calgary and, of course, across the province. Any way you want to measure it, this great city has truly been on a roll lately, and the city's profile continues to grow. Calgary not only rises in the ranks of organizations like Startup Genome, the Economist Intelligence Unit also this year named it the 5th most livable city in the world. It's clear that we know that we're doing things right here in Alberta because everybody seems to want a piece of the action. Between April and July of this year alone, more than 46,000 people moved to Alberta. That's 1% of our entire population added to our province in just 3 months. Of course, that following on a year where we saw a record number of new arrivals in Alberta in 2023. That growth is beyond anything any of us expected. And it is presenting us with some short-term challenges. For one thing, it is causing a housing shortage in our cities. But the good news is that Alberta's housing market is responding well to the increased demand. For the first half of 2024, Calgary and Edmonton ranked first and second in the country for new home construction. So the construction industry is responding. Our rapid growth is also causing some rising unemployment in some industries, but labor scarcity in others. I think we still have 71,000 jobs that have gone unfilled because they're looking to find the right workers with the right skills for that. And there's also an increased strain, as we've seen, on public services and infrastructure. We're working hard to overcome these challenges while maintaining Alberta's unparalleled opportunities and quality of life. We're continuing with our work to refocus the healthcare system to improve standards and accountability and service delivery in the province across all the different service providers. And we're making some of the most ambitious investments in Alberta's school system in our province's history, with $8.6 billion to kickstart up to 30 new schools and as many as 8 modernizations and replacement schools every year for the next 3 years. In fact, over the next 7 years, we will create more than 200,000 new and modernized school spaces for students, which gives you an idea of what the school boards are expecting the trajectory of growth to be in this province. And it will mean that we're building schools as quickly as our labor force allows us to. We're also decreasing the cost of borrowing for Alberta's municipalities. As we've paid down debt and put aside money in savings, our credit rating has improved, which means we have had lower borrowing costs, and we're passing that on to the cities. That'll give them better ability to invest in their communities and give their residents what they need. And we are also partnering with the City of Calgary on a revitalization of downtown through a couple of key projects. Brand new event center, which will rival anywhere in Canada, as well as an investment of over $100 million in Arts Common to be able to bring that up to being a world-class arts facility and a rejuvenated downtown square with the Olympic Plaza. We're investing in post-secondary education to ensure our booming industries have the skilled workers that they need. And that includes funding a multidisciplinary hub at the University of Calgary to grow our province's capacity in the STEM fields. We know that careers in STEM remain crucial across many industries, and so growing our capacity here is an important step to ensure that we have the professionals we need to keep building our province in the future. I think this is one of the things that Calgary Economic Development discovered when they were trying to recruit Amazon to set up shop here, is that we needed to have a supply of new grads coming out. So not only does this investment at the university assist, but we've also funded a charter school startup that is so successful in Calgary that they're also expanding out into Edmonton. And I think that will also help bridge the gap for our young people graduating in this field. And speaking of the future, before I wrap up today, I will comment only very briefly on the upcoming US election. Like many of you, I am watching it with great interest. And we can't pretend that the outcome in a few weeks' time won't affect us here in Alberta. No matter who our neighbors choose, we can be certain that the decision is going to have an impact on us. But let me tell you what I would observe. Whoever wins and whatever happens, Alberta will be standing by, ready to export our products and trade with our American friends, just like we have always done, and we will continue to do that. That's why I feel very confident in predicting what's in store for Calgary in 2025. Here's what I expect to see in the coming year. It'll be full speed ahead and business as usual in one of Canada's best performing economic centres. That's what every sign and trend is pointing to. That's where Calgary's momentum is going, and I sure can't wait to see what lies in store for this incredible city. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you so much for coming. Nice to see you. Thank you very much, Premier. Before I set things up for our next speaker, remember, this is the interactive part. This is where we do stuff together. So, look at the QR code. There it is. Get the QR code. Get ready. Get your questions. Get the fingers going. Let's rock and roll. Okay, before we jump back into the action, what we've heard so far today is that there's positive outlook for our province and our city in the year ahead. We know it's not going to be easy. We know it's certainly not going to be a straight line. And that's why we can't take our foot off the gas. We have to keep driving and pushing to make sure that we continue to be the economic engine of our country. We have to be true to our ethos of being a city where dreamers, doers, visionaries, and most important of all, innovators. We have to continue to look future forward and make sure that we're positioned to be the place where bright minds and big ideas come together with an unmatched spirit to solve some of those big global challenges. And there will be challenges. We know that. I mean, we continue to see political strife, we see wars, we see tensions, we see armed conflicts, we see economic uncertainty, and more. The list goes on. And you know what's interesting? Is that half of the world's population have either gone to the polls or will be going to the polls in the next 12 months. That's more than any other time in our history. Just think about that, the change that that's going to bring. Now, obviously, there's one big election that we're going to be talking about, and that's, the elephant or the donkey in the room, depending on how you see it, which again is the U.S. election that's happening exactly 4 weeks from today. And as you just heard, regardless of which way it goes, it will have a profound impact on our country, our province, and our city's economies. So, what the hell does it all mean? Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because that's why we have our next speaker, who's going to help shed some light for us on what might happen and how it might impact us going forward. We're thrilled to have the former U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Mr. Bruce Heyman, here today to share his thoughts. Bruce is someone who intimately understands business and international relations. He's an American businessman, author, former diplomat who served as the U.S. Ambassador to Canada from 2014 to 2017. And before his appointment, he was the managing director and partner at Goldman Sachs. He remains active in international affairs, co-chairing the advisory board to the Canada Institute at the Wilson Center. And just last week, he was named the new CEO of Power Sustainable, which is a Power Corp company based here in Canada. Please join me in welcoming Ambassador Bruce Heyman.
So I arrived in Canada. I'm in the residence, and we have a group of people all around us. My wife's next to me. We're having drinks. We're having a conversation. Of course, as you're going to get to know me during this conversation, I'm pretty outspoken, and I'm talking, and I'm moving my arms. And a guy next to me looks at me and goes, "You're so American." And I looked at him and I went, "Oh, thank you." And my wife whispers in my ear, "I don't think that was a compliment, honey." So you're going to have somebody, hopefully you'll say he's so American, but not in a negative way. Maybe I'll give you one more story before I dive in. So before I arrived, in the creative sense that my wife is, she says, "Let's do a video introducing ourselves to Canada. And we'll just go all around Chicago, doing different things in Chicago." So here it is, it's January, we're standing in front of Wrigley Field. The iconic marquee is there, and of course it says, "Congratulations, Ambassador Heyman, good luck in Canada." And we're sitting there in jerseys, and we're doing a rah-rah moment. There are video cameras, there are people standing in the street wondering what the heck is going on here. And I look up and I went, stop filming. Everybody delete your photos from your phones, because I looked up and there was a misspelling. It said, "Congratulations, Ambassador." So whenever I slip up or do something, my partner in life and love and all things looks at me and says, "So, Ambassador, why did you do that?" So hopefully you won't call me that at the end of this conversation. We are in a super strange place in the United States. And I know so many Canadians who look over the border and say that quite frequently, but now it's especially strange because we have a man who has literally been convicted of sexual assault. He's been convicted actually multiple times of cooking the books of his company. He's been convicted and has fines of hundreds of millions of dollars on defamation. He's been impeached twice. He's led an insurrection on January 6th. He has multiple charges against him in multiple jurisdictions that have yet to be adjudicated, bankrupt 6 times, and he's currently saying the absolute most bizarre things every day. You know, like the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio are eating all of your pets. It's like, what are you talking about? Or then he wants to make a point on women's choice and choice of abortions, and he's saying that somehow Democrats are encouraging or somehow supporting abortions after birth. Like, you've got to be kidding. And yet we stand here today, and this man is tied to be, and potentially could be, the next president of the United States. Well, it must be the economy, right? Well, absolutely not. The economy in the United States, as we just heard, over the last 4 years has been unbelievable, actually. We're at 4.1% unemployment, near full employment. We've added 16 million jobs over the last 4 years. We're bringing back manufacturing through a number of pieces of legislation, but onshoring quite a bit in the States. The stock market's at a record high or near record high as I stand here today. $50 trillion in household wealth has been created over the last 5 years. And yet, half of Americans or more think the economy's bad, and some large number of them think we're in a recession. So I say we're in a strange place. And I thought I'd maybe take a few minutes to explain how we got to this strange place, because I think many of you would agree, I think so, that this is completely bonkers, but maybe it's not. So I want to take you back 50 years. And during those 50 years, back 50 years, a lot of people, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, small towns all over middle North America, middle United States in particular, but also in Canada, had manufacturing towns. And lo and behold, the managers or corporate owners or CEOs of those businesses said, how do I make more money? How do I increase my profit margins? What do I do? And it began the process of, well, where can I reduce costs? What can I do? Labor. If I made this stuff that I make in Dayton or Pittsburgh or Detroit or Toledo or Milwaukee, if I made it in Mexico or China or somewhere else, I could make a huge margin, a big pickup. So the average worker who was dependent on going to work every day, whose father may have worked in that same plant before him, went to work on a Thursday, walked in, and was told, we're closing the doors. We're out of business. We're moving to Mexico or China. And that was the beginning, I think, of the loss in confidence of authority within the United States. By the way, that trend continued. And then we hit 2008, 2009, where the wizards of Wall Street took the safest asset that we know, our homes, and created the most bizarre instruments that you can think of to leverage up housing in America until it blew up. And then people began losing their homes. So at first, they started losing jobs. Then they started losing homes. And then technology came. With all the benefits that technology has, technology also has benefits of making things with less people, robotics, using technology to manufacture. And in doing that, we laid off people, and now they lost confidence in what does technology bring. And then we had a pandemic. And they lost confidence. Look what they did to Dr. Fauci in our country. They somehow positioned this as against the healthcare system of the United States and authorities. So it's a series of these events that have taken place where I think we've lost confidence throughout the middle core of our country in leadership. Corporate leadership, investment banking leadership, the finance, technology leadership, government. Where is government for me? They don't seem to be delivering. I'm paying taxes, and if you looked at the average wage of the white male for the last 40 years, and you indexed it back to inflation, it really hasn't increased that much. And so they're struggling. And then, of course, we had inflation that came post-pandemic, and it's stark. And so there are a lot of people that, yes, the orange man, who is convicted, who's done all these awful things, who's, actually sexually assaulted women and is taking rights away from Americans and is the greatest threat, I believe, to democracy. He seems like something that maybe should work for some number of people because they're so frustrated with the way the system's operating, feels it's not working for them. So I think it's important to just understand that. Now let's talk about the election for a minute, and let's talk about the impact. We do not elect our presidents by popular vote. So when you look at national polls in the United States, first of all, they're all over the map because there's a lot of misinformation and poll error taking place and bias that's taking place, but it doesn't mean much. We elect our presidents via something called the Electoral College. You hear about it all the time. I'm going to give you a 2-minute summary as to how this darn thing works so that you can walk away in the next 30 days, really follow this election more carefully and accurately. Every state gets an electoral vote for the number of senators they have and the number of congressmen they have. Every state has 2 senators. They start with 2. Every state has a number of congressmen. That's based on population. Every time we have a census, it gets reapportioned. We have 435 members of Congress. So 50 states, 2 senators, 100, 435 members of Congress. That makes 535, and they give Washington, D.C. 3, as if it had 2 senators and 1 congressman, even though it's not a state. Now, in the infinite wisdom of the people who came up with this system, they should have come up with an odd number, but they didn't. They came up with an even number, which means, in reality, it can be a tie, 269 to 269. But it takes 270 to win. You're going to continue to hear that. It takes 270 to win. Now you know each state has electoral votes, and every state except 2, the popular vote wins. Whoever wins the popular vote, they get all the electoral votes. Those 2 are Nebraska and Maine. They have 1 congressional district that sits in Maine and in Nebraska that is separate and voted on by that congressional district. Other than that, that's the map. That's what we do. So let's look at our 50 states. We have 50 states. 40 of our 50 states, 80% of the states, have voted for the same presidential candidate for the last 4, same party, for the last 4 presidential races. So 80% of our states They're either red or blue. I know you guys are blue or red, but you know, we'll work that out some other day. But it's taken, it's done. So now we're down to 10 states, and of the 10 states, I think that's reasonably understood that 7 are in play. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. They call that the blue wall. It's up at the top. The southern flank, North Carolina, Georgia. West, Arizona, Nevada. That's your 7. Hillary Clinton had almost 3 million more total votes across the country, but lost in the Electoral College in 3 states by 77,000 votes. Well, it was worse in 2020. In 2020, there were 160 million Americans voted. The election was decided by 45,000 votes. Georgia, about 11,780. Remember Donald Trump calling, can't you find me 11,800 votes? Wisconsin, about 20,000. Arizona, about 11,000 as well. And I tell the campaign, oh, it's worse than that. 45,000, if half of the 45,000 voted for the other person plus 1 vote, so less than 25,000 people made the decision of who would be president of the United States out of 160 million people voting. And we spent several billion dollars to do this. This race is likely to be similar. It's going to be decided by a few thousand votes, maybe 50,000, maybe 100,000, maybe 150,000, maybe 25,000. In a few states, in a few counties, in a few neighborhoods. And that's the race. That's all you have to watch. You watch those states. I would say Pennsylvania is one of the most important ones because the pathways to win become more complicated if you don't win Pennsylvania. But if you do win Pennsylvania, you got a sense of how the evening's going to go as you watch the evening. So what's going to happen if 1 or 2 of these candidates win? Let me tell you a little bit about what's going to happen. And I have used the metaphor, this Canada, this is your tsunami warning. This means the conditions are ripe for a tsunami. That doesn't mean a tsunami will happen, but fair warning. And I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm just taking exactly what Donald Trump says he's going to do and repeatedly says it, and I know what he did his last administration. So the first thing he says he's going to do, which I think all of you become acutely aware of, he's going to tariff all imported goods. He's used the term 10% or 20%. I don't care if it's 10 or 20. If he puts a tariff on all imported goods in the United States, it's going to be highly inflationary. It's going to be disruptive with our allies, trading partners. It's going to be an incredibly difficult time for Canada. People ask me about CUSMCA, USMCA, and the review. If he puts the tariffs on, you don't need a review. There is no free trade agreement if there are tariffs across the board between our 2 countries. And it's likely you won't sit there and not respond. So you'll have to figure out how you're going to respond to a tariff on all of your goods. And yes, Alberta, I think he'll do it on oil as well. Because he's going to do it on everything because he's fighting for, at home, for his people to try to get the most profit that he can. Second, he says he's going to round up immigrants. He says out loud, I'm going to round up 11 to 14 million. I'm going to deport them. I'm going to put deportation camps at the border, and I'm going to round them up and send them away. He did that. We were talking about rounding up and sending back Haitians during his last administration, and Quebec was almost overrun on Roxham Road with thousands of people coming across in the dead of winter. Can you imagine if he starts stirring up 11 million people in our country? He doesn't even have to stir up 11 million. What if he stirs up 50,000? It's going to cause extraordinary anxiety. I fear that many of them will run, and they won't run south. Third, I believe there's a high chance that there will be an abortion ban in the United States. especially if he wins the House, the Senate, and the presidency. There's every indication that that's what they want. If they do that, right now women are going from red states to blue states to seek care. If all states you can't give care legally in the United States, where are women going to go? And you have limited capacity in your healthcare system. What if we become an authoritarian nation? An authoritarian nation that is not respecting the rule of law, free speech, freedom of the press. Canada and the US have gone across the world together since World War II, promoting liberal, not talking party, small l, democracy, small d, around the world of shared values. That's made US stronger and Canada stronger. What is the role of Canada in a world where we act more like Vladimir Putin or Viktor Orban or his friend Kim Jong-un, who he sends love letters to? I'm serious here. This, 2016, we may have thought a lot of his things were humorous. This is not funny anymore. I know Vice President Harris. A lot of her economic policies are being formulated. I think that a former Republican, I'm a conservative economically. I'm more progressive on social issues. But I see many Republicans of the Bush administration and the Trump administration coming out now and supporting her. We had hundreds join in of people who served in the president's cabinets and in the White House of those two administrations that have now signed on. I am one of over 700 business leaders that signed on. We have generals who worked in and around Donald Trump and said he's the greatest threat to national security. Oh, by the way, what do you think happens in NATO? He thinks that's a dues-paying organization. And 2% sometime out in the 2030s, I don't think is going to cut it for him. By the way, I do believe in today's news, Bob Woodward has evidence that he has remained very close to Vladimir Putin. I think he has made it very clear that I think he says he's going to solve that. He's going to give them half of Ukraine off the bat. So I think if Harris wins, there's more predictability. I'm not going to say we're not going to have our issues between our two countries. We do. We try to work them out. But the risks are super high in terms of our bilateral relationship, in terms of the province and how 90% of your sales go to one country, of your exports go to one country, the United States. By the way, I think we have no better partner, no better ally than Canada, and that includes every province and territory. And I think that we owe a deep debt of gratitude to our bilateral relationship and friendship over the years. But it will be severely tested coming up. I would say another thing. If there are Americans in this room, or you're dual citizens, I'm not going to name your name, the person that I saw just a few moments ago that she said she was, but she hadn't registered yet. Votefromabroad.org. There may be enough Canadians, I talked about how close this election is, that you've got to register and vote. If you know an American in Canada, they've got to register, and they've got to do it like today, because a lot of registrations are cutting off. I am forever an optimist. I am going to spend a lot more time in Canada. I'm going to do business. I believe in our cross-border trade. But this isn't funny now. This is a super, super serious moment. And I'm hopeful that enough people come together and recognize the seriousness of the moment we're in back at home in the US, back in 7 states, in those few counties. And if it's super close, I think he's going to go to court and he's going to say it was stolen and it's illegitimate. And we've seen the movie once before, but you know, they'll play it a little different this time. Now, in the good news, I think she's gaining ground. I think she is picking up some momentum here. And I think it's increasingly hopeful that she wins, but it's all going to be about turnout. And who gets their base turned out the most, which means the language is going to get escalated quite a bit. We also have a hurricane that may impact this. And we have a potential major escalation going on in the Middle East that could affect this. So, with that, I'm going to go to your questions, comments, observations. Hopefully you aren't going, oh, he is so American. At least I'm not. Hopefully you're ambassador. Okay, come on in and let's do some questions.
Thank you, sir. That was great. Appreciate that. All right. Well, thank you for that. Did I mention things might be a little thought-provoking earlier? Well, I think we've hit on that one. You know, I was going to kick this off by saying, hey, congrats on the new gig, by the way, and glad you'll be spending some time in Canada. Then I was going to say, hey, but are we going to actually get an unfettered approach, or is it going to be somewhat? So I think I've answered that question already, haven't we? No, we appreciate.
By the way, all of my comments have nothing to do with my new employer that I just signed up with. They're all personal, and please keep me from getting in any trouble there.
Man, there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of stuff we want to dive into. We've got some amazing questions coming in. I think I'm going to start off with something that's, you know, a little easier, but it'll get us into the mood, I think. So one of the questions from the audience, who happens to be a Team Calgary partner, so thank you. You know, how has the United States' perceptions of Canada changed over the years? And more importantly, how will that look in the future, regardless of who wins? And are we still considered important?
If you do polls of Americans across the board and ask them what is their favorite foreign country and who do you know and where are your best relations, Canada always, you know, falls in the very top end, number one, every time I've ever seen a poll like that. But getting back to what I saw over these last few years, and you saw it too, for some reason, he tries to find what he thinks is the weaker partner and use that to squeeze to his advantage, Donald Trump. And I think his advocacy, strangely enough, along with Tucker Carlson on the truckers' protest that took place, and then the fundraising that was being done within the United States, and the pejoratives that are being used about, you know, Canada and its leadership, was so unbecoming of a former president. Now, you remember this, and look, I raised my hand and I couldn't take it. Peter Navarro, after the G7 meeting, said on Fox News that there was a special place in hell for the Prime Minister of Canada. And I went on national news the next day, and I went on CNBC, CNN, across the board, and I demanded, as the former US ambassador, I demanded an apology to Canada. And I said, that's not the language that comes out of a White House that you should ever use for an adversary, no less for your best friend and ally. And we got the closest thing to an apology, but that gives you a sense of how they play. And they put tariffs on your steel and aluminum based on US national security. Now, come on, nobody believes that Canada steel and aluminum is national security. My point is, he can use this as a tool. Remember when he went after your milk and dairy? Less than 0.5% of our total trade is in milk and dairy. It is inconsequential, and it is a balanced trade category, oddly enough. And sure, we have some differences with regard to it, but he made that a very large political issue. And so that's my fear, that he will use that, and he will use Canada if he thinks it works to his benefit.
So in that context, then, you think that our ability to be that quote-unquote best trading partner has a chance to be diminished based on who walks in?
No, look, you know, it's all relative out there. If he puts tariffs on everybody, and look, you think of the three trading partners that the U.S., the three top, and we rotate around a little bit, but it's Canada, China, and Mexico. He has particular challenges with China. In fact, both parties do. That means tariffs are probably going to be in place there. And he has unique problems with Mexico that some of which are just bizarre, but it is what it is. And so I think Canada still stands stronger on the three going forward.
Okay, I'm going to come back to Kuzma in a second. I want to just shift a little bit into kind of where you're going to. I know you've been in the job for, what, 6 days now? I think last night was 5, so today is 6.
6 days.
I mean, how is the relationship between our two countries going to impact sort of climate relationship around? How's climate change going to impact? What does that come to? What do you think? And then, how do we help position ourselves as that energy transition leader to support the U.S. in some of the work they're doing, and our country as well?
So I look at the way we're tackling climate and sustainability as a three-legged stool. There's government in terms of both policy and incentives. There's philanthropy, people who are giving to non-for-profits that are promoting sustainability. And then there's business. And business tends to do what is economically correct and works well economically. And what government tries to do is, if it's imbalanced, they try to make that economics balance out a little more so that they can, get goals and objectives. For example, onshoring with some of our industries, they try to make it more attractive to bring the CHIPS Act and different things. So I think that if Donald Trump's president, the incentives to do that from the government side will probably go away or be diminished, unless, of course, they're located in red states that he is getting a call from the governor and say, don't touch this. Philanthropy will continue, and business will continue, I think. And so I think I'm hopeful that's a temporary pause by government and rejiggering, but I don't know. I do think climate's changing. I don't know how much man is impacting it, but that's a high risk to just say it's not. And so why don't we do things that make sense economically and invest in things that work economically and get us to a place that makes the world a cleaner place?
Interesting. Another question. This one's going to be an interesting one. So, how do you believe, this is a same question, two sides of the coin, if I can. How will Harris's continuation of the amplification, of the IRA hurt competitiveness? And the flip side is, if Trump rips it up, what happens?
Well, I don't think he'll exactly rip it up. I think he'll let the existing projects just run out, and new ones won't get funded. So it's kind of a weird thing that instead of ripping it up, I don't think that's exactly, and I don't even think that's in his best interest. And I think technically that would be hard to do. It just will, like the new stuff won't get funded. And the problem is these bills were passed, but they have multiple year lives to them, and there aren't shovel-ready projects. You'll have to get shovel-ready projects in each of the next several years going forward. So they're trying to implement as much as they can right now. I think that you will continue along the projects that are implemented, and I think that will continue under the Harris administration.
So you think it's going to be status quo? If Harris comes in, it's not going to be amplified. And so what's that impact for us, though, as Canadians? Now, obviously, you intimately understand the landscape. And what do you think?
I don't know if it's any different than it is currently. And I would still say, given your investment in technology and innovation and creativity in this province, I think you can be very competitive in that.
Interesting. Another question's come up. I mean, you've talked about the tariffs, which was great. And then, I think the Harrison-Waltz slate is also proposing Buy American provisions that we've heard.
Yeah.
In fact, I think, Harris was calling for the strengthening of the quote-unquote Buy American procurement, which is supposed to be the toughest levels in 7 decades. How is that going to impact trade between our countries, or what's that going to look like for us?
So look, what we have to do, and I told people in Ottawa this months ago, I said it's going to be super uncomfortable because both sides are going to try to outcompete each other on Buy America, Build America, Make America Great. I said there's a difference between politics and governing. We're right now in the heat of the politics. In the heat of the politics, if you remember, that IRA was super disadvantaged as we were all talking about it for Canada. And then, content rules changed. And as the legislation was worked through, kudos to your ambassador who worked hard and the folks in Ottawa who worked hard to get that included. I just think on a governing side, it's not going to be as strong as some of the politics today.
Interesting. Another question is coming up about NAFTA or CUSMA, I guess. I mean, we know that the Trump administration ripped it up. We'll use the word rip since it's in the theme today. Harris and Walz have both voted against the trade agreements due to worker and environmental protections. I think Harris voted against CUSMA. So what does that mean for this trilateral opportunity that we see or wanted to build out? Where are we going to see it, and what's that impact going to look like for our country, but our province as well?
So I think the biggest challenge, let's just say we move ahead and she is the president. The biggest challenge right now is Mexico. And it's clear there were a number of provisions that Canada put in and the US put in for Mexico for labor standards, wage standards, and environmental standards. And from everything I hear, they're not meeting those standards at the levels that they had committed to. And so we have that review that happens in July of 26. What I think will happen if they don't get their standards up or make serious changes and commitment to it is that it goes in the penalty box. It doesn't get ripped up. It just goes through annual review. And so it's still there. It's still working and it still exists. So the sign-off, though, will cast a pale over the agreement, I think, until we can get that straightened out. But for Trump, if he puts his tariffs in place, what I'm saying is, what is the trade agreement anymore if there's tariffs? The whole concept of the trade agreement that we have between our three countries is there are no tariffs on all this stuff because we make and build things together, nearshoring, it's good, supply chains. But if he puts tariffs on, that effectively eliminates the agreement. Oh, and by the way, just so you understand, he figured out how to put the tariffs on without Congress. What normally should happen is if you're going to do a tariff like this, Congress would pass a bill, President would sign it, and it'd become law. But what he figured out with Canada and around, that he has a provision called 232, which is the basis of U.S. national security, he can impose tariffs, the president. And so he did that on steel and aluminum. But what's to say he can't do it on everything based on national security? There's no kind of weird limitations of this. And, people say, well, I'll sue you over it. Well, I'll take you to court. I think he's used to that.
It's always with the lawyers.
Yeah.
Just kidding. We love you guys. Here's a question coming in again from the audience, and I mean, again, this is one that I think is out there. I mean, won't Trump be better for energy exports? I mean, he approved Keystone, and yet
Energy exports for the U.S. to export, or energy exports for Canada to export?
for Canada to export.
I'm sorry, I just want to understand who's importing and who's
question,
exporting. Look, he's saying drill, baby, drill. He wants to enhance fracking. He wants to build out that industry in the United States. By the way, we're producing the record number that we've ever produced in oil and gas in our country today by a lot, and we're the top producer in the world. We still don't produce as much as we need, and taking in Canada oil is still important, but it improves profit margins in that field if the imported stuff costs more money. It's a complicated issue for him, and it'll be interesting to see the way it plays. But once he starts allowing exceptions to his tariff proposal, then I guess that's an opening for you to go for lots of exceptions, and every industry is going to want an exception.
Interesting. So today we've heard about some local issues, we've heard some national issues, some provincial issues. I want to just touch on the international piece. So as you look at both candidates going into this election, coming out of that, obviously we've got a world right now that's in upheaval. We're seeing lots of stuff happen around everywhere. Can you just give us a perspective on what happens if Trump wins, what happens to Harris wins? What's going to happen in the geopolitical sphere that's going on right now? And what do we need to think about as Canadians as part of that?
I think his first move, as he said, he's going to solve the Ukraine-Russia issue in 24 hours. The likelihood of him doing it in 24 hours is quite small, unless, of course, he just says, Russia, you get to keep all this, and Ukraine, we're cutting all the money off, and so you're going to lose. And I think that's his game. According to Bob Woodward's book that just came out today, I think he's talked to Putin 7 times since he left office. What would he be talking to Putin about 7 times since he left office? I think that NATO will be under serious threat. I think that the anxiety for the rest of Europe will be so high that if that move takes place, that there will be significant rearmament that'll have to take place in Western Europe. And I think the pressure is going to be on Canada. If you think there was pressure at 2%, this number is going to go way higher than 2%. This is going to be a serious escalation. And so the NATO members seeing the US pulling back will call Canada and say, come on, let's go. And you're going to have to make a serious decision as a country how you're going to participate in that. And that's not a small decision. And the pressure will be significant. And do you align with Donald Trump or do you align with the rest of NATO? Because I see that, severing potentially going forward. I don't know how it changes the Middle East just yet, and I think this next week will be very telling. And I think he's going to build up significantly in the Pacific, which he said before, which, I don't know if I disagree with that too much, that we need to do that. It's just, I think we've got to protect NATO at all costs. I mean, the whole concept of NATO was a deterrence alliance, and he's ruining the deterrence when he said, Russia, go do what you want for everybody who's not paying at the 2% level.
And you think from a Harris standpoint, like from that camp, is it status quo, or what do we see? What
it's hard to say. It's more nuanced changes as opposed to radical.
You don't think we're going to see other countries go after that administration to test?
Oh, sure, they'll be tested. Yeah, of course, every administration gets tested at the very beginning. But she has some steady hands around her and people that I've known for a long time. But there's no doubt every administration gets tested to see where they are and what's happening.
I know we're getting short on time, and I just have time for one more question for you. I think, as you know, you're very familiar with the Canadian landscape and our political environment currently, especially. As you know, we may be going into another federal election in the coming year. From your perspective, if we have a change in government, let's just play that scenario out, and a Trump or a Harris administration comes in, what's the fundamental change that we can expect to see in those relationships between our countries?
Look, I personally believe that our two countries and the relationship we have should rise above, and I used to say 24 Sussex, but I know the Prime Minister doesn't live there anymore, but let's just say it, the White House or 24 Sussex, it shouldn't matter whether it's Donald Trump or Kamala Harris or anybody else in Canada versus the current Prime Minister, okay? I think our relationship should rise above that. It should last, way out into the future, and it shouldn't be beholden to any one party or any one person. I have said publicly, and I believe this, that Kamala Harris, who spent formative years growing up in Montreal, her mother was a professor at McGill, Governor Walz is your next door neighbor in Minnesota. And it's funny because people in the US hear people from Minnesota and they say, are you from Canada? You talk funny. But in all seriousness, he's close. He's done trade missions up here. These two are probably the best in terms of historical experience and fondness for Canada that you have probably ever had, including, Barack Obama and Joe Biden, who I work very closely with. I think you would benefit quite a bit in a bilateral relationship from two people who know you and love you and care about this country deep in their background and history. But look, I'm biased on this, but I'll tell you this. I look forward to the day where I could sit across the table from a Republican and debate size of government, level of taxation, environmental standards or not, women's choice, all these things. I don't want to be in a position where I'm sitting here worried about our democracy, the rule of law, the Constitution, and whether it's optional or not. And so I'm hopeful that the Republican Party finds its way and breaks this fever and finds its way back to being the Republican Party or something like the Republican Party. I'm sure it'll be a little different, that I knew and respected as, you know, somebody I could sit across and have a conversation. I think Donald Trump also, unfortunately, is a divider. It's always about them versus us. It's about dividing us by color, by race, by religion, by differences. And I think we need uniting right now. And we need to bring ourselves together. And I think, you know, I think the Vice President has a chance to do that. And I do believe she'll bring Republicans and put them in her cabinet if that happens. Wouldn't surprise me if Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger or some of these folks end up in the cabinet, very much like Lincoln did in bringing his rivals in. And so I remain wholly optimistic because I believe in my country. I believe, you know, Winston Churchill at some point said we're going to do the wrong thing over and over until we figure out the right thing. I'm paraphrasing, but I'm hopeful the right thing comes in 4 weeks and we get ourselves back on course and we do bang up trade with you every day and have fun and vacation together and travel together and fish together and just enjoy each other.
I mean, look, we could keep this going for hours. This has been fascinating. Unfortunately, we are at time. I want to thank you so much for the conversation, for the speech, for coming up here. It's been excellent to have you. Thank you for all your questions, everybody. Really appreciate you being here. You know, Bruce has given us a lot to think about. I'd also like to thank all of our speakers today. I think, you know, Joe Lougheed, Mayor Gondek, Mark Parsons, our Premier. I mean, your concepts, your comments, your insights were absolutely invaluable. And I hope you were able to take something away. Sorry, I'm getting pinged
Hey,
over
Brad.
here. Yes.
Before you wrap it up, we have a special surprise. Please welcome to the stage the Honorable Lois Mitchell, former Lieutenant Governor of Alberta.
Okay.
I know you all want to go. This will just take 30 seconds. I think it's great, the learning. I know that's what I'm here for. By the way, you know, they talk about age. I tell everybody you're only as old as you think you are. So I want you to know, I go in my office every day just after 9. I mentor people. Yes, that's what I love doing. I love connecting people. But the one thing, so you're welcome, and I'm just down the thing from coffee, free coffee, by the way, for those of you that don't know me. Come and visit, but I do want to tell you my biggest thing in life is being grateful. I learned that at an early age to be grateful. So even if you're grateful for small things, that's when you get the big things. So I'm just going to say, I want to say a big grateful and thankful to a wonderful man, Brad, you've been extraordinary. Your team is unbelievable. And you know what? Talk about Blue Sky City. And is that not amazing? And also, I've known Bruce forever. Bruce, did you know that we have 333 days, maybe not full days, maybe it's only 5 minutes, 333 days of sunshine. How good is that? Pretty wonderful. So, I just wanted to talk about Blue Sky City, and this is just a bit of a surprise for Bruce and his team to hang in his office. I'd like to present you with this wonderful painting by a lady called Wendy Wacko to say a special thank you for all you're doing for this city.
Thank you very much. Oh, you didn't have to do that. Oh my God. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Wow, that was not in the script or the thoughts. As my team knows, I don't like surprises professionally or personally, but this is amazing. So thank you. Wow, now I'm off track. Let's get you the hell out of here, okay? So before we do that, though, I want to say thank you again to ATB Financial for being our lead sponsor today. I also want to shout out all the other major sponsors that we've had, like WSP, CAT Pension Plans, Rogers, Post Media, Stone Olufsen, University of Calgary, Mount Royal University, and PLC Construction. You guys, again, putting this on and helping us and working with us, it's been amazing. We thank you for your support and belief in the work that we do. I also want a quick shout out to the team of the Calgary Stampede and the BMO Centre today for hosting us. How about a big hand of applause for the staff? It's been amazing, hasn't it? You know, also a massive thank you to the teams at Calgary Economic Development and the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. You inspire and motivate me every single day with the amazing work you do and the impacts that you're having on our community. And don't think you're not, because you are. Also, a very special thank you to the team at Calgary Economic Development who brought this event to life. Putting on events like this is certainly not for the faint of heart, and the work that you do and the way you pull it off seamlessly is absolutely amazing. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And lastly, I want to thank you. Thanks for spending the afternoon with us. Thanks for being here. I hope you had as much fun as I did, because I know this was a blast today. It's my first time hosting. But thank you again. I look forward to seeing everybody at Report to Community in the new year. So thank you very much, and have a great evening.